I've been avoiding the revision process for a few weeks now, but I finally feel like I'm ready to get back into it, and I just kind of want to talk about the different things I plan on doing while I'm in this revision stage. But first, a little bit about my story. Meredith, my main character, is a witch who's trying to create a person. At the start of the story, she's already tried and failed multiple times, and she's finally succeeded this time. So the vibes are kind of like Frankenstein, but instead of hating her monster, she absolutely loves him. So the first part of this whole revision process, for me anyways, is to get some feedback. So instead of rereading my first draft and taking notes on what I want to keep and what I want to change, I decided to send out my first chapter to a few alpha readers. This was the first time I shared my writing out with people hoping to get feedback, and so I was extremely nervous, but everyone was really kind and really helpful with their feedback. My goal with sending out just my first chapter was to see what people expected the story to be about. I wanted to know what vibe they got from the story, because for me it's really important that the rest of my story matches the vibe of the first chapter and that my first chapter is setting the correct tone overall. So let me get into some of the feedback that I got, and first up is just some general feedback. Gross, I love it. Ew, but also you have my attention. You asked for vibes, and vibes are definitely giving horror, like gross body horror. I will justify every single thing Meredith ever does. So the general reaction was what I was looking for, but then I also got some feedback that made it clear that some of the things I wrote were not very clear or were a little confusing, and I need to adjust the tone even more to make it fit with what my vision is for this story. There's a hint of humor in her being unhinged enough to try to make a boyfriend. I guess the question is, are you going for pitch dark comedy / satire with evil MC, or tragic anti-hero / morally gray MC? I'm so curious, is she trying to resurrect someone who died before? So she isn't trying to create a new version of the man, but simply someone who looks like him. I'm kind of getting hung up on that. So there are two takeaways from that feedback. One, that I need to really make it clear what the tone of this story is, because a few people commented on it being either humorous or funny, pitch dark kind of comedy, and that's not what I meant it to be, even though the original first draft was that way. However, I thought I got rid of that tone before sending it out. Obviously I didn't, and that makes me even more glad that I sent this out to people to read, because it really confirmed that I didn't push it into the other direction as much as I thought. The other thing is, I need to make this more clear, because a few people were confused on what my main character was doing. They thought she was maybe resurrecting someone, which is definitely not the case. This is more of a Frankenstein where she's creating someone new, not trying to bring someone back to life. Reading over that chapter again, I could definitely see why people thought that, but when I revised my first chapter, I definitely focused on making sure that it was clear that she is creating someone, not bringing someone back. And hopefully I made it more clear this time. And then one more bit of feedback that I thought was really helpful was, I like that we get a glimpse of her semi-obsession. I'd like it to be amped up even more, because who would make a man and fail and keep trying over and over again? I really appreciated that bit of feedback, because that's right. Why would you do something over and over again if it wasn't something that meant so much to you? And when I read the chapter over, I realized there wasn't enough emotion on Meredith's part. It's one thing if she's trying to create something for the first time and it doesn't work, but she's trying constantly, and she's so happy, or at least in my mind, she's really happy when she finally succeeds, but I don't think the chapter reflects that. And then one of my beta readers was kind enough to offer to brainstorm, and so we hopped on a call for a few hours, I think, and we just talked about my goals for the story, the tone that I want to have, and it was very enlightening, and I'm forever grateful for Margot for hopping on a call with me. Okay, so here's a comparison of the first paragraph from the original draft I sent out to alpha readers and the revised one. So the vibes are definitely different in the revised version, and while it's not perfect, I'm very happy with it. I still might make some adjustments later, but I want to just keep on moving through the rest of the chapters. Okay, I'm editing this video, and I just remembered that one of my alpha readers also left a really funny comment saying that I should turn this into a horror smut. I don't know if they were being serious. I kind of think they were, but I just thought it was a really funny comment because it was very different from the other bits of feedback that I got. I do want to point out a few of the changes that I made. So in the first draft, I used third person, and in the second one, I used first person because I thought it would feel more intimate if we got to see this new creation from the perspective of the person who created him. And for the second draft, I also wanted to focus less on what he looked like right away and more on how Meredith actually feels when she sees him for the first time in his completed form. I do describe what he looks like later on in this chapter because I do think that's important, but I wanted her emotion to come through first. Also, another change that I made that shows up later on in the chapter is his looks. He looks quite different than I initially intended him to in the first draft. If you're curious to see the whole first chapter before and after the update, let me know and maybe I'll make a video on it talking about the decisions that I made and why I made them. Okay, but now that I finally feel like I have a certain direction for this story, the next step in this whole process is to actually read it and then take notes on what I do want to keep and what I don't want to keep. But without even rereading the story, I already know a few things I definitely want to change, and one of them is the characters. So I have two different options that I'm playing around with right now. One is to get rid of some of the side characters because they no longer serve the plot in the way that I want them to, or I can change their purpose in the story. Either way, the characters that I currently have are no longer going to show up in the way that they are in the first draft. But after I do a reread and I work on my outline, I'll have a better idea of what to do with these two characters. And then speaking of an outline, after I go through and read everything and take some notes, I'm gonna outline. I really enjoy making a draft 2 outline and then comparing it to my draft 1 outline and seeing how much things have changed and how much they have stayed the same. I don't want this to be a completely different story. I still really like the original idea that I had. So my goal for this new outline is to blend the old outline with the new notes that I plan on taking after I read the draft again and make some decisions about what I want to keep and what I don't. And then after I finish the outline, I can finally start writing, which I'm really excited about. I haven't written anything for this story aside from the first chapter in quite a while, so I'm ready to just dive back in and get reacquainted with the story. So at some point while I'm in the writing phase, I plan on sending out my first chapter to beta readers. I'm probably going to do that within the next few days because I've already written most of it. There's just a little bit at the end that I need to adjust and maybe add to. And then when I finish this entire draft, I want to send this out to beta readers, and I'm really excited but nervous because I've never sent out an entire manuscript to someone before, and knowing that someone is reading my entire story from beginning to end is absolutely terrifying. Even the idea of asking, because what if no one replies? So that is something I'm worried about. But I had a good experience with sending out my first chapter, so I'll just be really positive at the idea of sending out the entire story to other people. My goal for sending this out to people is very early August. I'm hoping to finish this next draft at the end of July. So this might actually be more of an alpha reader situation that I'm looking for, since this is a rewrite, not just making small adjustments. So yeah, I'm hoping to have this out to alpha readers actually by the end of July, and I'm really excited. But in my next video, I'm actually going to be working on this story and revising, and I can't wait for that because like I said, I have not touched this story in quite a while. But as always, thank you so much for watching.